His car screeched in front of the mansion and plunging out, he fixed his tux a little before taking his drill towards inside. Maid opened the door, paying him greeting that he replied with his cold impassive face as usual and walking past he took a turn from entrance corridor towards living room but his steps stalled when his eyes caught sight of his family perched around in couches. He paused for a second when he saw them all giggling relentlessly but the very next moment he realized the reason behind it. Sweeping his hands in his pockets, he stood there with that beautiful but skeptical face, his gaze fixed on the figure back facing him and entertaining his parents and siblings. Her long wavy falls swung below her waist blocking her view behind her and her cheerful voice mesmerizing him as ever when her words came. You know what, I made him cupcakes, and I seriously thought he will at least praise me like some fictional romantic guy, but she was talking like she was presenting something in front of the family audience and they really have been giggling helplessly. Jungkook within second understood she was talking about him. She thickened her voice a little when she continued crossing her arms on her chest. Not bad. Nat and Taehyung cracked into laughter at her perfect way of mimicking him and Jungkook couldn't help but chuckle in amusement. She had been always like that. Though it had been weeks since that deadly incident, but he couldn't even still move out of those moments when he was near to lose her and he had been treasuring her to his best he could. She was healing him, those cracks he found hard to fill were being repaired by her and he had been trying to be better for her. He kept on standing there, struck, his hands in his pockets and all of his focus of that person who was making fun of him oblivious of his presence behind her. Taehyung's eyes suddenly caught him but he placed his finger on his lips, gesturing him to keep silent and the fact that he was present to enjoy his own parody made everything far more amusing to each other. YN took in a deep sigh of disappointment as she added again, not understanding the muffled grin of Nat and Tae. Seriously dad, I don't understand what this man is made up of. I mean yeah, he is off the charts good looking and breathtakingly beautiful but how the hell on earth is he that unromantic and poker-faced? She nearly exclaimed in exaggerated disbelief and Jungkook poked his cheek inside with a hint of smile on his face. She was not wrong, not even a bit. But one thing that she was probably not able to understand till yet was that he was improving. He was changing for her. He was smiling for her. Family audience again giggled silently and by now everyone knew he was here. And how the hell he even do that? She continued, standing straight to copy his usual posture and Jungkook instinctively straightened himself glaring at giggling Tae and Nat. He stands like this all the time, with his hands in his pockets. She spoke, her hands sweeping into the pockets of her trousers and sarcastically raising her chin up she again thickened her voice to make it more like him. I am Jaeon Jungkook, the great poker face of mafia world and I hate everything around me. He looked at himself, as if first time realizing that he was really standing like this at very moment and instinctively he pulled his hands out of his pockets and with a chuckle he leaned against the wall, crossing his arms on his chest. The family widened their eyes with unrestrained laughter as they enjoyed the whole thing. She was only one on this world who was capable of doing this to him and Jungkook pressed his lips in tight line to suppress the mix of smile and smirk as well as those devilish urge that she was going to confront after this stunt she was pulling. YN Act 2, Nat tried to warn her between her continuous drama but she cut her off, holding her palm up and spoke in between. No, actually that is not the only problem Nat. She continued making them press their lips and glance at each other because she still couldn't understand that her man was standing behind. He is not just unromantic, he is hopelessly dumb too. Jungkook's eyes narrowed but his smile gave him away that he was actually enjoying all this. His parents were smiling widely at playful kids and Tae and Nat passed each other giggles of understanding as she continued. I told him, Jungkook I am cold and I can't sleep while he was busy with his laptop. I thought he might get that I was missing him, but you know what he did. She huffed with frustration as she added. He simply grabbed me another blanket and went back to his laptop after tucking me in those double blankets. Her tone was all laced with disbelief and sulk and Nat this time again tried to warn her, her face scrunching towards Jungkook's side but YN didn't listen and continued again. Don't stop me Nat, she dismissed strictly. I am so done with this man. I don't know what I was thinking when I fell for him. Damn it, Jungkook's face fell. She just confessed. The whole family went silent too when they saw the paling face of Jungkook and YN's brows narrowed with confusion. What? I am not lying. He is really like that. Sometime I really feeling like smashing this man's head and make his brain all the way I want him to be. If not that, then at least beat him so much that he falls on his knees and say, oh YN, I'll do whatever you'll ask me to, I promise. Like seriously, doesn't his muscles get stiff with continuous poker face? She spoke dramatically and Tae and Nat once again laughed out with awkward laugh and this time Tae interrupted in between because it was all getting out of hand. YN, maybe you shouldn't do this anymore. YN's brows narrowed in confusion. Why everyone looked like they saw some ghost or so. Flipping her hair back she spoke with her signature confidence still not realizing that her man was standing behind her with a whirlpool of emotions brewing inside him. What? I am not afraid of him. And why are you guys talking like he is standing behind me? She said with a hint of amused smirk and both couples hid their faces in their palms to hide the amusement lighting their face. Nat, she spoke with frowned face, still not daring to look back because she could somewhere guess what they meant and glared at them for answer. Nat nodded in yes and she jerked her head back with eyes almost popping out. He was standing in his black tux, leaning against the door his arms crossed on his chest and his huge figure loomed in the way. His face was impassive, devoid of any expression but the blankness of his face was confusing. It was not just poker face but something restless stirring the godly features of his. YN practically stumbled back when he raised his brow at her and gave him an awkward smile. Jae Jungkook, she stammered, her hesitant smile all teethed at him as he wrapped her in his constant unsettling gaze. Why? When did you come? And, she twisted her neck to glare at Nat and Tae but they just shrugged nonchalantly. Traitors. She gritted her teeth at them, but they only replied with suppressed smiles. She once again turned back to face his cold but beautiful face. His thick arms were flexed over his built frame and his deep dark brown eyes met those back night ones. Hey, we were just talking about you. I was telling them how nice you are, isn't it guys? She awkwardly spoke, fidgeting with her few strands of hair. The family audience once again giggled to each other. Jungkook left the lean, his body expanding and his shoulders widening with a dramatically endearing way. YN's grin faltered, her pulse quickening, and she instinctively took 1 or 2 steps back as he walked towards her with slow deliberate steps and his hands tucking back into his pockets. I see, he said, though his face still blank but the edge of amusement was clear in his voice. And what about those compliments? Unromantic, hopelessly dumb, cold, poker face, damn it. He heard it all. YN's heart thudded loudly as he closed the distance between them, his cold brown eyes digging into her black ones. She struggled to breath, momentarily forgetting that there was an audience who was witnessing the drama. Jungkook broke the eye contact, looking past her shoulder towards his family, and he spoke with that same amused but expressionless face. I'll see you two later, right now I have something to discuss with this inconsiderate rude lady. He said, and YN gasped in loudly when her feet left the ground. He swapped her on his shoulder, holding her from her thighs and dumped her on his strong-built shoulder. We didn't do anything, it was her. Nat shouted from behind quickly as he walked towards the staircase carrying her effortlessly. YN continuously wiggled in his hold shouting to let go, but his grip was too strong and he was carrying her like a weightless thing. Put me down, Jungkook. What are you doing? This is so embarrassing. She squirmed relentlessly, hammering her fists on his hard torso, and her thick wavy falls were hanging upside down, swinging to and fro as he tapped through the stairs. His arms were circled around the back of her knees and she could feel his warm body sweltering beneath every squeezing part. He walked up, getting into their room and closed the door behind. Jungkook, let me down. I will kill you, I swear. She hissed at him, her small fist still persistent on his back, doing a little to even budge him. Jungkook paused on his steps, holding her from her waist. He swept her down. Her feet touched the ground and she quickly took a step back towards wall and glared at him. Her breath was heavy, chest rising and falling with gasps, and her thick black hair scattered all over messily, making her no less than a ghost. What the hell? She nearly grinned at him, her chin up, hiding her nervousness behind her apparently pissed tone as she ran her fingers to comb her wavy falls at place. He looked rather calm, regarding her with intense eyes, but his silence didn't bother her because till now she was used to his short-spoken and composed personality. But he stepped ahead, his eyes stuck into her tar-black ones, his face blank and dark and his features were stiff. YN instinctively stepped back as he advanced, her frown morphing flat and her heart picked a pace in her chest under his unnerving scrutiny. What? She hardly stammered, his heat seeping through his clothes and she could feel it reaching her body. Her back touched the wall, her breath getting hitched in her throat as she caught his unblinking gaze with merely inches apart faces. His heat occupied her whole, reaching her senses and warmed her whole up as his wide broad figure nearly overwhelmed her, making her heart stutter beneath the surface. Holding her gaze, he raised his hand up and softly tucked her hair back to her ear. His eyes flickered all over face, his breath warm on her, and the intensity of proximity had her nerves clutched tightly in her limbs when she felt a weakness in her knees. Then, he spoke, his voice dark and husky but still so deep to raise her fibers over her skin. I am unromantic, princess. He asked, his expression still not giving away anything. YN groaned in herself before gulping down due to rising heat in her core. Was he really serious? He was really asking such question with that cold poker face of his. Does she even need to answer that? Or she should show him his reflection in mirror so he could see how he looks. I am dumb, he continued in his still cold voice. So he was here to charge her. And cold poker faced. He trailed off, leaning too close to her that his breath hit her cheek with every word, flickering that damned heart and melting her mind effortlessly. Yes, aren't you? She replied as matter of fact, but despite the struggle, her voice came a breathy whisper from her dry throat. He shifted in his position a little, his hand tracing down and slowly snaked around her waist, stealing her breath with a soft exhale. His sharp scent and mind-spinning heat scorched her body and his chest hard beneath her fisted hands. Still his eyes were frozen into hers, and with a soft tug, he pulled her closer, her small lean figure collapsing into his huge and hard one with a gasp. YN felt her heart blowing up in her chest, his touch burning her everywhere. He sniffed a soft chuckle, his stiff features softening a little, making him impossibly alluring and unbeatably beautiful. He leaned in down, his chin occupied her shoulder into her thick hair, and sinking his other arm around her back he snuggled into a hug and mumbled, down there. I am. YN's heart skipped a beat. She was literally hidden into his warm broad frame, his face dipped into her hair over her neck as he sniffed in. Her mind melted, breath fastening as she trying to grapple with what he was doing. I am sorry, princess. He whispered, his breath fanning her hair and skin making her stomach churn as he continued his coarse whisper. I am sorry, I am not your ideal. I am not type of husband you wanted. He confessed, she could feel his security around her tightening around her along with the heartwarming sincerity in his tone. He snuggled more into her neck, not bothering messy hair in his way, and breathed in. It was like he was finding his peace into her, his body easing off beneath her curled hands on his chest as he added. I want to do better for you, but I don't know how. YN bite her lower lip. Her heart thudding loudly with unexpected words from him and those toe-curling gestures, leaving her all speechless. Then she felt him moving, his weight leaving her shoulder as he backed off. Both of his hands trailed up to her shoulders, softly grasping her, and she looked into his deep, meaningful eyes. Sorry to disappoint you. His hand swept to her neck, all the way to her jaw, and his thumbs caressed her cheek tenderly. His eyes flicked between hers when YN pursed her lips into a pout. This is not like you. What happened to you? You just came back from meeting Dad and you are behaving like this. Did he tell you any of my dark secrets? She muttered, fidgeting with her shirt button. Jungkook chuckled in amusement, raising her chin up softly. Giving a tilt to his head, he regarded her with a mild frown. You have dark secrets, YN. There was a sudden drop in his previous soft and vulnerable tone, making her brows scrunch with surprise. She tried to roam her eyes around, but he held her face in place to make her look at him, an amusement playing in eyes and a smirk curling his lips. I would love to hear them, but no, Chief didn't tell me anything about your dark secrets, except your first professor crush, your love letter that you wrote in your school, and your toddler pictures, and she snapped her palm on his mouth to block him spitting out, but the squint of his eyes told her that he was smiling beneath. Don't talk, she snapped out of panic, her ears turning red with embarrassment. Why the hell you talk to my dad on this topic? Didn't you just go to get update about those criminals? She added, trying to divert his mind somewhere else. He got her, abandoning any idea to tease her more despite the fact that she looked so tempting with pink cheeks and flickering eyes. Stepping back, her hand fell from his mouth, but her widened eyes still looking at him warily. With a playful smile at her, he grabbed her shoulders and twisting her aside he pushed her towards the dressing mirror. Standing in front of mirror, she caught his face through the reflection, his hands warm and soft on her shoulders, and so were his eyes. His fingers ran through her hair, gathering them neatly. He hung them aside on her shoulder. Those criminals are under custody, and they will be handed to Interpol today. But right now there is another thing that I need your attention for. He trailed off slowly, his voice even and soft. YN looked at him with scrunched brows. His hand left her shoulder and reaching his coat's inner pocket he pulled out something. A gasp made its way from YN's throat when he swung the jewelry around her neck. Jungkook, she breathed, her eyes wide as well as tearing up with gloss. She could easily recognize the necklace and she knew the importance of it for him. This, she couldn't contain herself, her heart warming with delight and so many emotions for him. It belongs to my mom. I think you know it because I saw mom's picture with your parents at your house today. She was wearing it in that picture. But it is only thing left from mom and I hope you understand what it means to me. It was with her and she was most important person to me. And now it belongs to you, as most important person in my life. You know I am not good with words and I am not a person who can coax you with sweet things and lure you with over-the-world affection. We both share same pain but I am not as brave as you YN. I am not as strong as you to bear myself with those wounds. I hope you can accept me with all those shortcomings. Until I am able to make myself better for you. He said, his voice barely above whisper and his words getting thick with emotions. Her tar black eyes brimmed up, a tear sweeping to her cheek as she traced the chain over her collarbone. I know, thank you, she whispered back, her voice trembling with overwhelmed feelings and she twirled around to face him. She tipped her face up, her brimming pools of coal tar meeting his rather warm orbs. She smiled at him, his gaze momentarily dropping down to her lips. He dipped his head, his hand slowly and hesitantly reaching to the back of her head. YN's heart thudded in anticipation, her smile morphing back in reaction to his intensifying eyes. Last time when he kissed her, he couldn't give it a thought because he was afraid of not being able to kiss her again, but now, it was all fine and he wanted to know what she wanted. YN slowly raised her heels a little, her hands clawing to his shoulders and she gave a tilt to her head. His lips found hers, slowly pressing against each other. Her heart thudded loudly and she knew so was his. He kissed her, soft and tender, his fingers running in her hair and a trembling sensation ran through her limbs making her losing herself in his hold. Jungkook got her, dipping his head more he swept her feet back making her lean against the dressing table. His movement grew intense, his hands tugged on her head, pressing her closer as her taste melted into his mouth. YN crossed her arms around her neck, his heat and desire overcoming every possible sense of her. He pulled back a little, allowing her to breathe a little, but the next moment he had her mouth occupied by his again. This time he devoured on her, passionately, holding nothing back and she could feel the desperateness and vulnerability that he was talking about being wounded just now. He was seeking his salvation through her. He was seeking his strength from her. She caught his pace, soft noise escaping her mouth uncontrolled. Her brain melted, limbs going jelly with overwhelming sensation that ran through her veins freeing her off any consciousness and she got lost into a void of tingling feelings. He kissed her relentlessly, exploring every part of her, his hands grazing her skin up and down in her hair and her back and offered her every emotion he actually held but couldn't put ahead in words. YN opened her eyes, feeling familiar warmth and soft grip around her waist. He was sleeping, hugging her to him possessively after the last passionate night. A smile spread through her lips, blushing cheeks turning red once more over the memory. She realized that she was sleeping on his outstretched arm, his fingers vaguely draped over with her thick black hair. YN ran her fingers around her neck, tracing the most meaningful gift he gave her. You are awake. She got startled with a gasp, stumbling a little in his hold when sudden whisper came. Sighing in, she rolled around, still in his persistent hold. Tipping her head up, she met his brown eyes and his face as expressionless as ever. He ducked a little, placing a kiss on her head and hugged her into his interlocked arms. She could hear him breathing into her hair erotically, his huge body warming her more than the blanket over them as she practically snuggled into his collarbone. When did you wake up? She asked over his chest, his scent gracing her breath. She could feel his chest rumbling with his calm and steady heartbeat. How this man managed to stay composed when she is literally tripping over her heart in his proximity. Or maybe he has just took her in as his calm. Just now, he replied as short-spoken and concise as he was. YN peeked up in his embrace, pecking his jaw lightly. She felt him tightening his arms around her in response. Slept well, she asked, wanting to continue the conversation with him in this soothing surrounding where his heat was comforting her and he was all attentive towards her. She saw him offering a smile to her as he replied. Better than well, he replied, the answer spreading a helpless smile on 𝑦𝑛's lips when he added. And you, best ever, she nearly exclaimed, the smile all evident in her cheeky bright tone. His hand swept from her waist to her hair, caressing them slowly. He looked at her without a word. She knew what he meant. She knew he was thanking her, telling her that he cared about her, but he was short on words. But his eyes were enough. A ringtone shook them off their romantic trance. Jungkook untangled his arms around her and rolling around he reached his phone. 𝑦𝑛 slipped off the bed to walk into the washroom. As soon as his eyes traced her disappearing behind the washroom door and yanked up on the bed. Any problem, chief? He said, his tone wary and his eyes getting back that permanent frown. What? He glanced at the washroom door again cautiously. Yeah, I'll see it. Just give me an hour and I'll be there, sure. He hung up the call and running a hand in his unruly hair, he took in a calming breath. 𝑦𝑛 and Natasha entered the mansion, carrying the shopping bags and smile pasted on their lips as they talked nonchalantly. 𝑦𝑛 walked in and she paused, her face brightening up with surprise when she saw her father sitting with Jungkook and her parents-in-law and 𝙤𝙤𝙤. Dad, she exclaimed, running towards him before she collapsed on the couch beside him. When did you come? You could have told me. And, calm down 𝑦𝑛. I came back with Jungkook. Thought I should see you. He replied, interrupting her heightened reaction, and everybody smiled. She glanced at Jungkook with beaming eyes, who only replied her with a small smile, his gaze persistent on her. Though she found it concerning because he was all fine in the morning, but she didn't give it a bother because she knew how he was. He was regarding her with unblinking eyes, that somewhere confused her, but she let it slide for now. Natasha, well guys, we are totally drained with shopping stuff and now it's time for dinner. Come on, we are starving, isn't 𝑦𝑛? She spoke, cracking her neck tiredly, and 𝑦𝑛 looked like she just remembered that she was hungry. Oh yes, she recalled, I am so hungry. Natasha drives like hell, it nearly drained my calories. Both ladies giggled, getting up from the couch, but weirdly, the rest of the family was looking a bit low-spirited that both of them didn't care to notice. Sitting around the dining table, both ladies were again blabbering and laughing as they chirped out the day's events. But there was an unusual silence around the table. Jungkook tapped her shoulder to gain her attention, and when she looked at him with her glowing face, he gestured his finger towards his cheeks. 𝑦𝑛 didn't give it a second thought, and tipping her head up, she placed a kiss on his cheek, not caring about the audience at all, and turned back to her meal. Jungkook paused at his place, his fork falling down from his hand and his breath got stuck. Natasha and 𝙤𝙤𝙤 groaned loudly together, but their amusement evident in their voices when they whined. 𝙤𝙤𝙤, arg, please. Can you two stop this for a while? Seriously, get yourself a room, okay? Natasha, I seriously can't with this public display of affection. Can you two spare us some space? 𝑦𝑛 giggled all teethed at them, shrugging towards Jungkook, but she frowned a little when she saw Jungkook all silent and focused at his plate. She nudged him a little, but Jungkook snatched a tissue from box and whipped her cheek off before saying, I meant, there is something on your face. He said, his voice expressionless, and even that 𝑦𝑛 finally noticed was something wrong with. He took a pause, looking at Natasha. He added in his same husky but blank tone. And you don't have to bear with it for time being. Ladies narrowed their brows and whole family exchanged glances with each other. Natasha chuckled slightly to lower the horror of his words, and keeping her voice easy she asked. Why so? Are you guys going somewhere? Are you guys planning some outing? Her voice rose few octaves out of excitement, and 𝑦�ن's face lit up too when she snapped her head towards Jungkook, but his stiffened face was saying otherwise. Both of the girls looked around, and skeptical faces of family were telling them that they missed something. But Jungkook broke the ice, his tone stable when he said, no, he dismissed, without looking at 𝑦𝑛 and pretending to be busy with his meal that he was hardly eating actually. She is leaving, with mom and dad. He finished shortly, and 𝑦�n's slight smile dropped to pale face. Jungkook still didn't look at her, continuously fidgeting his spoon with his plate. 𝙤𝙤𝙤 sighed in at his dumb brother when Natasha shot him a questionnaire glare. To easy off the situation, he spoke up. 𝙤𝙤𝙤, you are such a party pooper, Jungkook. You could have done that calmly. Wait, 𝑦𝑛 halted him, turning her frowned face towards Jungkook. She demanded. What do you mean by I am leaving with mom and dad? Where, and why? When he still didn't look at her, she snatched his spoon off his hands and sternly placed it down. I am asking you something. She grinded him, restraining the frustration that bubbled up due to his composed behavior after blowing such news on her. The whole family went silent, unsure to what they should do. Jungkook took a sigh. He already anticipated this reaction and hardly knew how to handle it. The leader of those smugglers escaped away. Though we have now better protocols, and Interpol is with us too, but it will take an indefinite while to get him. Till then you, mom and dad are leaving for abroad. He trailed off effortlessly, but 𝑦�n's face hardened. What with this dominating order? Wasn't it just last night when he promised to be better for her? Now here he was, back to his fucking unreasonably bossy self. Just like that, she whispered, her voice thick with surprise and disappointment as she continued. You decided everything for me just like that. And you didn't even bother to discuss it with me. Are you serious, Jungkook? There is nothing to discuss. This is not my decision, it is a security protocol. He dismissed once more as plainly as it was nothing serious at all. 𝑦�n's jaw fell open. Was he for real? She really thought better of him. 𝑦�n, security protocol. She gritted in disbelief. Is this how you are making out of it? You are imposing your orders on me and expecting me to head down to you. What the hell you think of me, Jungkook? She nearly shouted out of frustration. Jungkook closed his eyes to heave in a breath, and holding his hands up in defense he began once more. 𝑦�n, you are being overly dramatic now. This matter is far more important than your stubbornness, and I can't risk your safety. Not a bit. He trailed off effortlessly as if she was just a kid whining over something trivial. What infuriated her more was how calm he was throwing his decisions on her and not even thinking about her ideas or so. Why the hell did she even expected anything better from him? He was like that, since forever. YN, you have lost your mind, Jungkook. Can spare me some dignity. What am I to you? A property that you can deal with however you want. Her mind spun, body shook with fury that seethed beneath the surface. She looked around to the rest of the family and they were all silent. That meant they supported him too. YN, Mom, Dad, she looked for any sensible reason to make out what they were trying to do but looked like he had convinced them all. But it was not going to happen this way at any cost. Mr. Young, YN, he is right. Now those criminals will direct on both of us. They broke in the mansion already. Even though they don't have those resources anymore, but we can't risk anything. It's not for forever, just a while and you can come back. He explained in Jungkook's favor. YN scoffed in disbelief. It was ridiculous, not just the decision itself, but the fact that no one even bothered to ask her at all. He didn't bother to talk to her at all. Her jaw clenched with anger. What with this unreasonable attitude? Jungkook, listen YN, he tried to speak but. No, but she cut him strictly, holding a hand up in dismissal and got up from her chair. You can't be serious. Is this what I mean to you? I really thought you could be better. I thought you would at least know how to treat others. You will know how to respect others a little. I thought you will not make me feel like something under your command, like some subordinate of your gang. But I was so wrong about you. She spoke with clenched jaw, her body trembling with the brewing fury over his ridiculous behavior. Running a hand through her hair, she took in a shaky breath. Jungkook left his seat too, getting up to reach her hand, but she backed away. I can't believe this. You are still nothing but a selfish retard who loves to play his power control and thinks he is always right for himself. Since you have decided everything already, let me tell you this. One thing, Mr. Mafia, I am not going anywhere. And no one can order me around or tell me what to do. Damn you and your security protocol. She shouted shakily, twisting on her heels and stomped out of the dining room, leaving everyone speechless. Though they had long come to know what she meant for Jungkook, but he was not a man to bear this much from anyone. But she was not just anyone now. And probably he was mistaking it. Natasha got up too, facing him with stiff features. Are you for real, Jungkook? Can you be a little more sensible? When will you understand that she is not one of your men who are obliged to listen to your command with head down? Natasha hissed at him and the face straightened with understanding. But I am just doing it for her safety. He retorted, running a hand in his hair out of frustration. Natasha took in a breath, her voice came calm and low when she tried to explain. Natasha, it is not about her safety, Jungkook. We all know you care about her and so does she. But she is a person. Can you at least leave her some dignity rather than treating her like something you own and protect? You should have explained it to her, talked to her and listened to her. She is not angry for the decision, she is disappointed in you. And so am I, she finished angrily. Taehyung tried to hold her hand but she yanked it away and walked out too, leaving both men sighing in. Taehyung got up from his seat and his voice was usual calm and playful when he spoke. So family audience, the drama has ended with two angry wives. Please excuse me because I don't want to sleep in lawn tonight. My wifey knows how to kick my ass unlike yours buds. He crooned, lowering the intensity of situation and ran outside. Jungkook stood there speechless and entranced. How did he not realize it all? Why his protective bossy instincts take over him and the consequences are nothing but hurting that one person he care about the most. He promised her that he will do better, still he only ended up messing things more. Jungkook, I'll talk to her. Mr. Young got up and placed a hand on his shoulder but he stopped him. It's okay, Chief. I'll see it myself, he uttered flatly, striding out of the dining room. Mr. Jaeon patted Mr. Young's shoulder reassuringly and gestured him to sit back down. Mrs. Jaeon, kids will sort out their things, Mr. Young, don't worry, she reassured politely and he nodded back with a slight smile. Jungkook walked where she could be exactly and a faint smile appeared on his face when he really found her at the same rooftop as he expected. She was sitting as she was the day when he came to propose her. Walking ahead with drink cans he cleared his throat to get her attention. She didn't turn back, still hugging her knees her gaze traveled from black night sky towards ground in front of her. Sighing in, Jungkook slipped on the ground beside her and extended the juice can towards her that she only replied with turning her face away from him. Why are you here? Her voice came clearly pissed and she didn't look at him still. Jungkook slid the can on the ground towards her, a creaking sound filling the silence and he himself took a sip from his drink. Am I really that bad, YN? He said, his voice low and guilt was too evident in his tone. The frown in YN's brows eased for a fleeting moment before narrowing back again. Yes, she snapped at him, her wavy falls jerking around. He tried to reach out the wandering strands of her hair but she yanked his hand away before gathering all of her hair to one side of her shoulder. The chain around her neck cleared its way to his vision and Jungkook practically gulped down. This is what she was to him. He had tucked the token of his love to her in form of the most important thing he ever had and he gave it to her. But he was failing in expressing it to her. Then why are you still with me? You knew it since very first day how I was. But you still chose me. YN's eyes widened, her jaw falling down. He was totally hopeless. She knew he was trying to sort things out but he was just not good at making words. He was truly out of the world dumb and she couldn't do anything about it. Because I was crazy. She snapped at him once more and snatched the can from ground before gulping a big sip down. Jungkook scooted closer to her, his shoulder touching hers but YN slipped aside to create a little space in them. He didn't insist further, instead he raised his hand to hers that wrapped around her knee. When he grabbed her hand, 𝙤𝙤 tried to pull it back, but he intertwined his fingers with hers tightly, not caring about her glaring black eyes shooting daggers at him. Listen to me for once, okay? He insisted, not letting her hand off his grip until 𝙤𝙤 gave up trying to pull away and turned her face from him. I told you I am every single thing you convict me with. Dumb, cold, jerk, and that selfish retard too. But along with that, you must know that I care about you the most. I really love you, 𝙤𝙤. 𝙤𝙤 snapped her head back to him. He was confessing to her. So bluntly, and so casually. Did he really said that? Her wide eyes were looking like the midnight sky they were sitting underneath. Deep and vast, and he could happily drown into them. He knew she was processing his words that he had finally gathered so boldly and straightforwardly in front of her. His voice was low, a vulnerability descended in his tone when he added, I don't know how much you can realize the meaning behind my words. They sound too flaccid and tasteless when said so casually. But I mean all of it. Can't exactly tell you since when. Maybe when I saw you first at Dong's mansion half conscious, or maybe when I mindlessly tried to choke you and your eyes pulled up, or maybe when I braided your hair first time, or maybe when I kissed you first time. Or maybe when you were hanging with my hand on the rooftop and I was desperately pleading you to hold on. I can't say for sure because they were all falling in love moments. Maybe I fell harder for you in every next moment. 𝙤𝙤's heart swelled up. She knew he was not a person who would just talk empty. He was calculated when talking, and that only meant that he was saying every word out of pure sincerity. And the feeling had her pulse quickened and mind racing with disbelief and surprise. She didn't want it to break in, just him talking about her, and she wanted to listen to him more and more. Her grip on his hand tightened, as he scooted closer to him and rested her head on his shoulder. It's not about that, Jungkook. I am Ju. She tried to say something, but he interrupted, getting what she wanted to say. I know what you want to say. I should have told you earlier. I should have discussed with you first before deciding anything. It's just, he huffed out a breath of disappointment as 𝙤𝙤 raised his eyes up to look at him. He was looking straight in a void, his tone getting weak and more vulnerable as he continued. This is the way I am. I didn't mean to boss around, but since the moment I got to know that that fucker escaped away, I have been losing my mind with racing possibilities. I felt my heart piercing half whenever I remember those painful moments. Those where I was holding my mom. Those where I was holding you. Begging to not leave, to stay. For a second that day, when you tried to untangle your hand off me, I thought I will lose you too. And I can't put in words how I felt that time. My death is not a concern for me at all, but any harm to you, 𝙤𝙤. That's where my greatest fear lie. Those things were in the back of my mind, clouding my judgment when I discussed with mom and dad about your leave. I don't mean to impose anything on you, neither did I came here to convince you for something. I can protect you here too. If you don't want to leave, fine, you don't have to. I will do whatever you will say, 𝙤𝙤. Because you mean world to me. You are the reason I smile now, you are the reason I cry. You the reason I even feel anything at all after mom. And that necklace is the proof to my words. He went silent, his body loose and calm under her cheek on his shoulder, and her eyes were fixed on him. I just want to stay with you, she replied, not wanting for him to stop talking, but she knew he had already done more than his ability. He had said everything out. Now it was just him and his wordless presence for her, and she was the one to fill the silence further. I will bear with you. Just way you are. I will keep up with you. But you are not allowed to boss me around. She mumbled a bit playfully, closing her eyes on his shoulder and wrapped her both arms around his huge bicep. She felt him leaning his head over hers, maybe swirling around in past memories somewhere. Thank you for bearing with me, he said, momentarily raising his head to kiss her hair and rested it back. She could hear his steady breaths, and cool air of night caressing them around as they just warmed each other up. 37, 38, 39, Nat and Tae entered the training room, and the scene unfolding in front of their eyes had their jaw drop in disbelief. Oh my holy eyes, Taehyung exclaimed when they saw Jungkook and 𝙤𝙤 at the workout area. 𝙤𝙤 was sitting over him while he was doing push-ups. He exchanged a glance of surprise with each other, and then both them cracked a little. Walking ahead, they reached them and stood with their hands on torso. 𝙤𝙤 gave them an all-teethed smile, going up and down with his push-ups. So now we have to bear this in training room too. Natasha sighed, shaking her head, and 𝙤𝙤 chuckled at their done face. Why angry, Nat? I am helping your boss with workout. You should thank me, isn't it, baby? She crooned along with her cheeky giggles and heard Jungkook chuckle down there as he nodded a yes. Oh please, Taehyung whined. Our boss is totally smitten by you, 𝙤𝙤. Come on, Nat. I think we need to get used to this cringe and public display of affection. He exclaimed with a huff, wrapping a hand around Nat's waist, and both of them moved towards the treadmill, shaking their head. 𝙤𝙤 giggled at their done faces before continuing the count. 45, 46.